There are plenty of cats in this game that are slept on and plenty that are just overrated, be that because of another cat that replaces it usage wise or possibly power creep with newer stages, or maybe some other reason. The only rule for this list will be the fact that Ubers won't be put into consideration because I'm not a big Uber guy, and because a lot of others will have more experience with the cats of more consistent rarity. And there won't be that many cats on here because a lot of units that are seen as good are seen as that way for good reasons. Normals, Island. Taking Manic Island out of the conversation, Island is a well-regarded melee unit that's useful throughout EOC and other parts of the game, though with time his place as an anti-red melee unit has become rather replaceable. With a cost of 1,200 C, they're also pretty expensive for what they do. What you get with Island is some solid health, 3 knockbacks, and high single target close range damage. Like a lot of other units, his 3 knockbacks are meant to help with his survivability, and it only helps in super specific scenarios. Like possibly a lot of enemies are doing tons of damage, then he'll probably have 3 hits in order to hit whoever's in front of him. At total plus 90, he has 20 KHP per knockback, and effectively he has 41 KHP, but for 1200 C, he still isn't worth the effective 24k damage he can do. In red stages, he can be knocked around pretty easily, especially if they're doing some crazy damage, and if they outrange him. And with the cost of 1200 C, there's little to no reason as to why you shouldn't replace him with Can if possible outside of niche scenarios. Specials, Bondage Cat. Bondage can be your best anti-red tanker without question, as at maximum abilities he has a staggering 136 KHP with a 40% chance to dodge attacks for 1 second, 30% chance to freeze enemies, 7.2k DPS, and immediately slow. He can basically counter any possible red enemy, so why do I think he's overrated? It's for 2 simple reasons. First being the fact that without fighting reds, he has none of these abilities and he would only have 68 KHP, with a slow movement speed of 5. Unless the stage is only red, he's gonna get wrecked and you're gonna lose 1035 C, and even to get him to these max abilities you have to pay 655 NP total for a cat that can only fight reds, which as literally the first enemy trait in the game, it's insanely power crept and has been for years. Growth is cost down until it costs less than Bondage, and though he'd probably live for less time since he doesn't have the dodge chance, he's still better in more situations and effectively has more HP at level 30, as he has 258 KHP, plus with Weaken he'd gain 516 KHP in total. On top of this, you could get Courier for some high damage too. Bondage is totally outclassed and possibly he's not overrated. But I did see a few videos talking about how great he is despite there being cats that exist at level 30 that make him nigh irrelevant. Dark Laser, 28k DPS effectively and alright HP at complete max with a 15% chance to throw out a level 6 wave all sounds good on paper, plus the fact that Dark Laser has an insanely fast attack rate, but it's not. At max, she has 68 KHP against reds and blacks with 1 knockback and 210 range. The damage certainly can shred, but her movement speed is absurdly lacking at 5, and even with max cost down, she still will cost 1140 C with a low cooldown, meaning that she could easily drain your wallet if you're not careful. With lacking movement speed and honestly only kind of good HP for a unit with only 210 range and single target, it's unlikely that she'll be alive for all that long for that DPS to be a factor. She's kind of like a better version of the worst known Uber in the game, Huge Hermit. Those stats seem really good, but in reality, they don't help because of a few things that bring her down, those being her HP and her movement speed. There's little to no reason to use Dark even when fully maxed over cats like Courier, Pizza, or even within her own set, Heavy Assault Cat for who you need to fight. Plus, she's very expensive to invest into, as even a wiki says that you've got to go all the way in or just not do it, which will set you back by 615 NP. Dark Laser isn't even a good cat, like at all, and the fact that some people think that she is absurd, as even within her niche she's super replaceable. So what if she has 28k DPS if she can barely use it and she needs time in order for that high number to set in? As a melee unit, she's going to die quickly if the enemies barely push or if they have some range. I've seen many videos about how she's actually very good thanks to these bare stats, when all of that outside of a few rare scenarios is false. Try anyone else and don't touch this cat. You'll progress at the same speed with or without her. Mina. Mina's biggest strength is her standing range at 435, LD through 300 and 700, and her alright damage, though I don't think this is all that impressive in most situations. Enemies get easily into her blind spot, and despite her pretty high range, she still requires a stepping stone a lot of the time when you deal with more powerful relic range enemies so that she can remain safe. Mina's basically a 4-star version of Aphrodite with a worse ability, and while she isn't bad, I wouldn't say that she's good as, for example, the wiki would describe her. Relics either push really hard or have annoying range, and the two enemies that it says that she counters, those being Amos and Autumn, just aren't true. Sure, technically she outranges them a bit, but that's assuming that they never move and for a while. And they're both quick enemies with solid range and area attack, and Amos literally always knocks back and slows your cats. Against enemies that are super fast, their blind spot will be invaded. Mina, in my experience, is just underwhelming even if my guards up like crazy. Rares, Paris. Paris has been, for years, seen as one of the most solid spammable range rares in the game, with their 350 attack range, 900 C cost, and area attack. She's very replaceable though. Paris is only great early on or on some stages, and a lot of the time as a mid-ranger, there's no reason to use cats like Caraman or nowadays Courier over her, instead of keeping her and investing in her talents. Plus, her 900 C cost is kind of crazy coupled with her extremely low cooldown. You can very easily wipe away all the cats you have on spamming Paris cats by accident, and this happened to me a lot as well. Once you true from Cameraman, or if you get one of the dragons pretty strong like Manic or Lil, then why still use Paris? Or hell, if you even have Fiend. Cameraman. Cameraman is a very powerful cat, especially when talented, and from time to time I still use them, but a lot of the time Courier is far more preferable over her. They have the same standing range and Courier naturally does more damage than her, but he also has LD, meaning that he can pierce. And Courier pierces a lot, as his range is from 175 to 400. Camera's saving grace is her talents that can even the playing field a bit, namely the resist wave, survived, and defense plus attack buffs. Once you get her to her absolute max, as in 50 plus 80, she'll have 5.3k DPS and 32k HP. She also has 4 knockbacks, which makes this cat only have 8k HP before she gets pushed back, and a sad movement speed of 6. Compare that to the talentless Courier at his max, which would mean that he would have 23k HP and 5k DPS, and you can kind of see why Courier sort of wipes Camera. Sure, Camera has more HP, but Courier has very similar DPS, higher movement speed at a high 25, a frankly better niche with more enemies he can affect, and 2 knockbacks, meaning he has an effective HP of 11k per knockback. Camera isn't a bad unit still, but for general situations, definitely replace her or use her with Courier. The only thing she really has over Courier is a chance to survive, rave resist, and tremendously rare crits. But even without any of this, Courier still has a better chance of getting to his enemy thanks to his high movement speed. Against floatings, use her because of her strong versus them, which gives her 7k DPS and 53k HP, but aside from that, she's a unit that gets outclassed pretty easily by Courier. Poop Master. Puppet Master and Charlie have so much over this guy. Range, movement speed, attack frequency, a higher uptime at slow for 6 seconds, and honestly, I'd say don't even use this guy. Though Hoop Master's chance to freeze is higher than Charlie's at a 40% compared to a 30% with Charlie's, Puppet Master's still way better at actually applying the debuff, and slow is usually good enough for stopping medals. Despite this fact, I still see Hoop Master used sometimes online from other people. It's just kinda surprising. Super Rares. Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk simply costs too much for what he does. A 2-second slow on enemies in an area between 800 and 1200 isn't worth 3750 most of the time, when you could instead stack units that slow whoever you're trying to fight for a permaslow, or simply spend that money on something like spawning a Balrog, or simply saving it to continue stacking attackers. Deadeye for me is far more useful, as he has no blind spot but the exact same range combined with the ability to knock back and slow for 3 seconds. In cheesing strats, Cyberpunk's great, but most of the time he's not really needed or on the same level as regular debuffers, especially with his over 130 second cooldown. He also becomes totally useless once an enemy enters its massive 799 range blind spot, so if the enemies are pushing hard, then I doubt that a 4-second at max slow effect will help you much. Manic Macho Legs. Outside of scenarios where a lot of enemy meat shields are being spammed, Manic Macho's usage is limited to being a sniper that hits up to 1150 range, that does light chip damage against enemies with high cooldown. Manic Macho does help chip down bosses a little bit, but the range they have is overkill, and at level 50 they do 7k damage per wave. Why not use an LD unit that can pierce a bit like Courier or Housewife, assuming there aren't any meat shields? And even if there are meat shields, the LD units will still probably be able to hit the boss, assuming it's not like Kamel or something. Manic Island. Manic Island is basically a normal island, but his leveling is better. So if you get him early on during Into the Future for example, he can help majorly, especially thanks to his way lower 735C cost. In all situations, Manic Island is better than regular Island, though as you might know, melee units aren't all that great when you get further into the game. Against Reds outside of niche scenarios, there's no reason to use Manic Island over cats like Row for defense and Courier for offense, and in general situations, why wouldn't you use Can or any more effective melee unit than him like Fishman? He's not useless at all, but he's definitely outdated, and this is similarly true for all other island variants. Aside from Brainwash Island, I guess I don't have him. Melee units in UL will get wrecked by the high damage and curse abilities, unless they're built to fight relics, and even in Cats of the Cosmos, most cats are preferable over Manic Island outside of, again, niche scenarios. Conclusion! Thank you everyone for watching this video on cats that I believe are overrated. Dark Laser, Cameraman, and Cyberpunk were big ones for me, and if you think that some cats are overrated that I missed, then say so in the comments. Also, never forget to disagree with me if you do. Before this video ends, here's 2 verses. Ephesians 6, 2 and 3. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you and you will have a long life on the earth. Our parents always have our best interests in mind, or they might not depending on your situation. But even if you disagree with them from time to time on things like politics or religion or whatever else, you shouldn't keep hating them from within your heart. That's a waste of time and you'll be angry about something you can never change. Always stuck, worried about the past and never moving on from it, when you could instead reconcile your differences internally or externally with your own parents and live a happier life. Be sure to have a good day everyone, and goodbye.